Podcasting from Dallas, Texas, I am Shireen, and this is the Yumlish podcast. Yumlish empowers people with chronic conditions like type 2 diabetes and heart disease to take charge of their health through diet. And this podcast is created to amplify the voices of patients, health professionals, employers, and community members who are working to reduce the risk of these chronic diseases and put your health first. Today's episode features Registered Dietitian Jennifer Rodriguez. Jennifer chats with us about working with Latinx individuals living with diabetes, her inspiration and focus on plant-based foods, and busting myths for cost and nutrition within plant-based foods. Like Yumlish, Jennifer practices out of Texas, and for our listeners in Texas, make sure you stay tuned until the end to hear about an exciting upcoming event Yumlish will be offering in the region. On today's episode of the Yumlish podcast, we are speaking to Jennifer Rodriguez. Jennifer is the owner, registered dietitian, and food photographer behind Food is Vida, a nutrition consulting and media business where she specializes in both teaching preventative and plant-based nutrition, as well as inspires the Latinx communities to enjoy their cultural food in combination with nutrition therapies to enhance their health. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So glad to have you on. One of the things that I want to dive into, Jennifer, here is what led you to become a registered dietitian and specifically to adopt a plant-based or vegan diet?
Yeah, so it's funny. Ever since I was young, I've always had a clear path of what I wanted to do. I also knew I wanted to help others. I was always involved in like sciences. I loved, just general well-being of beings. So I thought I wanted to, help, beings. And I say beings because initially I did want to be, a veterinarian. I loved animals. I wanted to do veterinary medicine. So you kind of see where this is going. I just loved animals and I loved helping them. I was born in Los Angeles, California, so it was very nature focused. And eventually I did move to Texas, which is, it's great. It's a cow town, here in the stockyards in Fort Worth, Texas. However, one day I did go to a vegan vegetarian restaurant in Fort Worth, and it kind of changed my life. Like I mentioned, I loved animals. I went to this vegan restaurant. It sparked a new path because I got to know a lot of good, yummy food that was plant-based. So actually, both of these questions that you asked me kind of merged together because me going to this vegan restaurant really opened my eyes to good, plant-based food. And it actually then sparked a interest in nutrition, which, I was totally blind about, in previous years as a, young adolescent. So it really, put me in a path towards wanting to learn how we process food, what's in our food, how food is grown, like origins. So that's really where I, tend to reflect back on and think, I think that was the turning point for me of when I realized I wanted to be a dietitian. I wanted to learn about, evidence-based science when it comes to vegan, vegetarian nutrition. And then being born in a Latinx community, in Los Angeles, California, I always had that tug also of wanting to help out that community. So I then blended those two things. I wanted to specialize in plant-based nutrition. I wanted to specialize in helping out the Latinx community as well. So that's kind of, where I came from and how I came to being a dietitian in these specialties.
Lovely. Now, your company is called Food is Vida. What does that statement mean to you, and how does it shape your work? How does it really connect with your focus on the Latinx community?
Right. So Food is Vida translates to food is life. Food really translates to many different definitions. It can be more complex than people think. Food is not just nutrients and energy. Food can be, joy, it can be culture, it can be compassion, it can be memories, tradition. So this is why I kind of coined the two terms together. Food is life, but at the same time, I want to teach people that food is much more, than the nutrients. It can kind of form these different pillars in our life, and gives root to all these different things that really shape the values in our life. So that is, initially why I coined the two terms together. Food is life, but it can also be many other things that we need to cherish and respect.
Mm-hmm. That's so strong. One of the things with Yumlish is, our focus within the diabetes community. So how do you advise Latinx individuals living with diabetes to adjust their diet for diabetes management while still incorporating their cultural foods and really honoring their roots?
Yeah, so I always try to, teach that it's a combination of therapies. It is going to be partly food, and it's going to be partly just managing, blood sugars, making sure you're self-monitoring, making sure you're taking medications, going to your doctor's appointments. In regards to the nutrition, aspect of it, I do tell people to, kind of embrace the plant-based, idea. You don't have to go fully vegan if you don't want to, but, plant forward, diets are helpful for diabetes management. So some advice I sometimes give the Latinx community is to, always emphasize on portion control. Eat your traditional foods, but portion control can go a long way. Adding healthy fats that are traditional to the Latinx community is very crucial. So like avocados, eat them more often. Don't be scared that they're fat. They're good, healthy fats for us. And then, low sodium is always something that I try to encourage in this Latin, community. Instead of putting a lot of salt in whatever meal you're making, or if you're going to get canned foods, look for the low sodium canned foods. So those are some advice I do try to encourage. And sometimes even in this, specific community where diet culture is kind of rampant, I do encourage to focus on the portion control, but also focus and kind of see if you are under eating. Sometimes under eating can be the issue in a lot of these, communities or populations. So, avoid skipping meals, avoid skipping important foods like whole macronutrients like carbohydrates. So those are some good tips I like to give this, specific community, especially if they're trying to manage diabetes.
Mm-hmm. When we look at, and that's interesting that you say that, because when you look at diabetes, when you look at obesity, we see it rampant in minority communities like the Latinx community. Mm-hmm. And one of the key things that we see sort of there is, while there may be obese, they're still malnourished, right? So malnourishment it's not just like, oh, if you're obese, you're getting all the nutrients. You're not. And so malnourishment is another huge element to all of this. How do you sort of navigate that in such a way so that you're addressing the nutrition needs, you're addressing sort of the diabetes, obesity as well at the same time?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with the food guilt. Sometimes we try to avoid meals or skip little snacks that might be crucial to our health. Because we have food guilt, because there's a big emphasis in, body image, and that, diet culture often pushes. So I try to, teach my patients or, my community to not be so focused on that diet culture or that body image, so kind of teach them to release that food guilt in a healthy manner. I think that can go a long way with helping someone. Also, tackle malnourishment or tackle deficiencies. Letting go of food guilt really opens up the variety of foods that people can start bringing into their meals instead of focusing on taking things out. I try to tell people, let's focus on bringing things back in.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Now, your unique approach to nutrition is plant-based or, vegan. What do you see as some of the health benefits of following such a diet, again, particularly for those with diabetes?
Yeah, so some short-term goals, if you adopt or, focus on a plant-forward diet, can be blood glucose control. We've seen a lot of studies where fiber really does benefit short-term control of blood glucose. So incorporating all these good grains, all these vegetables, fruit into your diet and balancing it all well can really, give us that short-term benefit of, blood glucose control. Some long-term, benefits often are tied with other chronic diseases that might accompany someone who has diabetes. So like cardiovascular disease, sometimes kidney failure, some of these things go hand in hand together. So we see that plant-based diet really does focus on these chronic diseases and their symptoms and their signs being lowered. For example, plant-based diets are low in sodium, they're low in saturated fat. Both of those things decrease blood pressure, they decrease the insulin resistance and, cholesterol and our blood lipids. So these are all, benefits of a plant-based lifestyle for people who have diabetes or other chronic diseases.
Interesting. So within plant-based diets, there are often assumptions made that people can't get enough nutrients from just plants, whether it be a lack of iron, B12, or protein. When someone living with diabetes is thinking about transitioning to a plant-based diet to manage their diabetes, what are the key things they should be thinking about when building their plate?
Yeah, so kind of like I mentioned, let's not leave out any big nutrients out of our plates. Let's focus on making sure we have some carbohydrates, making sure they're rich in whole grains and fiber, bringing in some fats, not being scared of the fats, bringing in the healthy fats like the avocado and the, healthy oils. Also bringing in like the plant protein that, we often talk about, making sure your plate is really balanced with those key things. Usually when they are balanced and we bring a variety of foods in, we see that there is, less of a chance of getting deficiencies. So, for example, the Academy of, Nutrition and Dietetics, they do agree that this plant-based diets can be appropriate for all life stages. They really help us in, preventing certain diseases, certain chronic diseases. So it's very beneficial in that sense.
Interesting. So we'll hear more about Jennifer's thoughts on this topic after this message from our sponsor. We'll be right back.
This episode of the Yumlish podcast is made possible by Anchor. Anchor is a free and easy way to create a podcast. Their creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor also distributes your podcast for you, so it can be heard across Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
All right, Jennifer, so we're back. I want to talk to you about an interesting poll that we did on Instagram. So we asked our Instagram followers we asked them pretty much who has considered a plant-based diet but thought that it might be too expensive. And actually it turns out that 100% of the voters responded yes. It seems there's a stigma that eating plant-based is more expensive than a diet which includes meat and dairy. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so that's not surprising. Often for someone who might be new to the plant-based, lifestyle or diets, they do have this stigma of plant-based foods being expensive. And it actually can be expensive, like any diet, if you focus on, just expensive ingredients or overthink things, things can get expensive. But the reality is, if we do some research, if we do some exploring, the plant-based diet can be affordable. So a good example I love to give people is, for example, the TVP or textured vegetable protein is often advertised as being like a high-end food in some of health, focused grocery stores. But it's actually been found in Latin grocery stores for many, many years. And they just call it, dehydrated soy. It has two different names, but it's essentially the same thing. And the price point is cut in half. So if people just do a little bit of researching, just go exploring in their grocery stores, they'll often find affordable choices. Beans and legumes are actually much more affordable than some cuts of meat that are, very lean. So comparing, plant-based diets to animal-focused diets, there actually is a good evidence that shows that they actually can be affordable and sometimes even more affordable than the meat-focused diets. So it's a misconception.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I think the because plant-based seems like a newer concept in essence, but really it is not, right? Like we've been eating plant-based foods for decades, centuries, in fact. And so it seems like a newer concept. It seems like a concept that would cost too much. But the truth is that it isn't, clearly.
Right. And in many, cultural cuisines, there is always some type of plant substitute that has always been encouraged in that cuisine. And so dehydrated soy, or TVP, has always been in Latin cuisine. It's sometimes not widely known, but it's always been there. It's always been affordable. So that's one I always, recommend to some people. And then just another simple example that also has to do with soy is just a basic the tofu block. It's, about $1. Mm-hmm. It has multiple servings. It can be very, very affordable.
Interesting. So I'm totally going to put you on the spot then. Okay. And I'm going to ask you for your favorite plant-based recipe that you would like to share here, and that maybe you've shared with patients in the past. And maybe we can do something with tofu or dehydrated soy. So I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. So 2 recipes that come to mind that are actually, it's my favorite dinner and it's my favorite breakfast. My favorite dinner is tacos, specifically al pastor tacos. It's a very traditional, type of taco. It's actually gaining a lot of popularity right now. And I do have a recipe, on my website that people can go visit. And it does use dehydrated soy, crumbles, or TVP. Very easy to make, very high in protein, has some carbohydrates, has some veggies. So that's one of my top favorites. And then my favorite breakfast food would be like a basic egg scramble. But, in a vegan version, we would make tofu scramble. And to make it, Latin and, a favorite Latin cuisine of mine, it would be adding a little bit of chorizo, which there's also soy substitutes for that. And those have also been in, Latin grocery stores for many, many years. So it's called soy rizo. So it's basically breakfast, egg scramble, but a vegan version that's actually widely known already in many Latin countries. So those would be my top 2. And I have those, on my website, and I actually have videos too. So you can just watch it.
Oh, that's great. And what we're going to do is, we're going to link that so folks can see that on there. So maybe now it's a good point to talk about, how can people, as we, come to the end of the episode, how can people connect with you, learn more about your work? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I do have a YouTube video, that's where you can find some of those videos. So Food is Vida. On YouTube or on Instagram, any social media platform, I'll be, and you can connect with me there, or just visiting my website, via email or phone number. Those are easy ways to, be in connection with my business and myself.
And what is the website again?
foodisvida.com.
Perfect. That's lovely. Well, Jennifer, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. I absolutely love talking about food and like cultural foods more specifically, and especially for those with diabetes, which is right up our alley. So it was a pleasure connecting with you and talking to you. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, Shireen. I love being on.
So find Jennifer and Yumlish on all the social media accounts linked in our podcast show notes. Our Yumlish socials help you learn more about our mission at Yumlish, keep you updated on helpful tips for managing your diabetes, and giving you access to exciting opportunities with Yumlish. With that, to our listeners in Texas, Yumlish will be running a diabetes management course here in the Dallas region. If you are interested, email us at info@yumlish.com and we'll connect you over to that. Lastly, if you enjoy Yumlish podcast and know a healthcare expert working in the nutrition space, reach out to us on Instagram to nominate them. Send us a DM telling us who you want to nominate, what they do, and why you believe their work is making a difference in the lives of individuals to conquer chronic illness. Thank you again. Until next time, stay well.
Thank you for listening to the Yumlish podcast with Shireen. If you like our show and want to learn more, you can find information at yumlish.com. You can also leave us a review here. We will see you at the next one. And remember, your health always comes first.